You've all heard about the 2008 K2 disaster, right? How did that happen? How many people died? Did anyone come back alive? You'll get all the answers in this video. Welcome back to another amazing episode of Adventure Uncovered. The 2008 K2 accident happened on August 1st, 2008, when 11 mountaineers from worldwide expeditions died on K2, the second highest mountain on Earth. 3 others were critically hurt. The number of fatalities that occurred over the Friday ascent and the Saturday descent was the deadliest single incident in K2 mountaineering history. When reported later via eyewitness accounts of survivors or via radio communications of climbers who died, sometimes minutes later, in the course of the events on K2 that day, various plausible scenarios have been given about different climbers' timings and actions. Some of the specific details are still unclear. So before we move on, what is K2? After Mount Everest, K2 is the second highest mountain on Earth, with a peak elevation of 8,611 meters, or 28,251 feet. K2 is a mountain in the Karakoram range, close to the Himalayas, and it lies on the border between China's Tax-Kurgan-Tajik Autonomous County and Pakistan's Gilgit-Baltistan area. It's statistically the second most dangerous peak in the world in terms of fatalities per summit and is regarded by mountaineers as being significantly more difficult than Mount Everest. The bottleneck, a steep couloir from the seracs of the ice field on the east of the summit, is the most hazardous part of the ascent. Since there's a considerable risk of avalanches and falling ice, climbers try to spend as little time as possible there. On this day, this segment would prove particularly fatal. K2's climbing season is from June through August, although in 2008, bad weather stopped any parties from reaching the summit in June or July. 10 distinct groups were waiting for favorable weather at the end of July. Some of them have been waiting for almost 2 months. Acclimatization and preparation for the higher camps on the mountain, the highest peak of which is Camp 4 at 7,800 to 7,900 meters, or 25,600 to 25,900 feet above sea level, took place in the months before the summit push. 70 climbers from 15 missions converged at the magnificent peak, unaware that the calamity would strike once more. While no 2 climbing tragedies are ever identical, many of the same weaknesses, both logistical and personal, would result in a calamity on K2 that was every bit as catastrophic as the one that occurred 2 decades earlier. Despite the presence of numerous cameras, it's still unclear as to what occurred on the summit day, August 1st, 2008. By that time, only 25 climbers remained who planned to tackle the summit from Camp 4. When they set out, the conditions were ideal. The only major challenge on the approach to the summit is the bottleneck, a hard traverse at 8,200 meters or 26,903 feet overhung by a massive slab of ice, sections of which might occasionally but not frequently break away. Things appeared to be in order. However, some disarray at Camp 4 had left them an hour behind schedule. Then, as is so often the case in the Highlands, a chain reaction of circumstances unfolded that led to calamity. Several members of the international team were among the last to set out for the summit and were surprised to see a massive queue of climbers ahead of them barely moving at all. They turned around on the bottleneck, convinced that there was no way to ascend and return before dusk. While others waited, Alberto Zerain, a Basque solo climber, was in the lead and placing ice screws. It was believed that the rope would be secured all the way through the bottleneck, but the rope had also been fixed by the local high-altitude porters. Before the traverse could be fastened, they had left. It took them at least another hour to bring the rope up from below. The movement through the bottleneck was hampered by slower climbers and those who needed or wanted to rest getting in front of some of the faster climbers. Climbers had to pass one another on fixed ropes as a result. Dren Mandic, a climber from Serbia, slipped and fell 100 meters down the slope during one of these techniques. He seemed to be in good shape before falling. The international team members turned around and headed back up to aid, but by the time they got to him, he had already passed away. In contrast, the Serbian squad headed down to assist. Mandic's body was slid back to Camp 4 by the Serbs with the aid of the international team member Fredrik Strang and high-altitude porter Jehan Baig. Baig, who had been acting strangely and may have experienced altitude sickness, slipped, pinning Strang's weight on the rope. When Baig finally let go of the rope, Strang encouraged him to stop the impeding slide, but instead, Baig careened off the slope and died. The devastation keeps coming, and this story gets even worse. But don't worry, nothing will happen to you. If you want to climb safely, click that subscribe button. Sering and Pasang arrived at the Korean climbers in the early afternoon after they had spent the previous night in the death zone with their cousin Jumik Bot. Sering stayed behind with one of the Koreans who were too badly hurt to continue the hike. Pasang and Jumik led the other two Koreans as they moved in the direction of the bottleneck. However, another sizable piece of Serac fell as they made their slow descent, pelting the four individuals with ice and snow. Later, Sering described how horrifying it was to witness his brother and cousin fall to their deaths in the commotion. Both Dutch climbers, Wilco van Rooyen and Marco Confortola, had treatment for severe frostbite and lost toes. While alone on the mountain for 2 whole nights, Rooyen had hallucinations and became snowblind. Confortola found the body in the path of the avalanche. He thought it belonged to Ger McDaniel. Another mystery surrounding the 2008 K2 catastrophe adds to the perplexity of the situation. Meherban Karim, Dohabahed's HAP, was still missing. In the late hours of August 1st, Karim and Dohabahed were left seen leaving the peak. Van der Gevel only came across Dohabahed above the bottleneck, indicating that he and Dohabahed must have been separated in the dark. In his book, Surviving K2, Van Rooyen backs up the idea that Karim camped out on the mountain above him with Confortola and McDaniel. Once more, Van Rooyen offers photographic proof. On the morning of August 2nd, something that appeared to be a climber can be seen above the Serac field. The individual appears to have vanished in a subsequent image, and a trail can be seen going down the Seracs. 11 men in total, including Hughes Dilbahed from France, Ger McDaniel from Ireland, Dren Mandic from Serbia, Rolf Bay from Norway, Jimk Bot and Pasang Bot from Nepal, Jehan Baig and Karim Meherban from Pakistan, Park Kyong, Hwang Dong and Park Hyo from Korea, died on K2 over the course of 24 hours. Many people questioned how they could have abandoned so many of their fellow climbers on such a treacherous slopes of that of K2. However, Lars Nesse contends that the majority of people are merely unaware of the true difficulty of the climb. In The Summit, Nesse claims that detractors are upset when people don't go up and rescue people in this horrible situation when you likely may be murdered by doing so. There will be things that we will never know, but you should always consider what to do in this situation. Thank you for watching. Do comment down below and also refer to other videos on our channel. Never forget to smash that subscribe, like and bell icons, and we'll see you in the next video.